Hey kids, time for another dad story. This is a long one, so hope you're sitting. All right, back in Boston, I worked for Gateway Crafts. I mentioned them before. That was the sheltered workshop for adults with developmental disabilities. And while I was working there, I met Stephen Caruso, who was their handyman. And, he would help fix up, plumbing, electrical, anything that was going wrong, he would fix. And we had an electric kiln there, and he fixed it, and I was impressed. And when I started 3D and Up, the pottery business, I asked Stephen if he would help me because I considered him a talented electrician, and he said sure. And he charged like $17 an hour in 1993. So typically it would have been like 70. So that was a huge savings for me. And he was an odd fellow, but we got along well. And he worked for cheap. And he set up, he ran wires and dug ditches and wired my garage to put a kiln in there. And we put a wood burning stove in. We did all kinds of stuff. And, like $100 later, my kiln worked. So I used him for many years with the pottery business. In fact, when I moved out of the garage and into, it was the brewery complex, and there were 2 buildings there, and, he helped me in both of those buildings. Big projects. And in addition to being an electrician and a plumber and all these things, he was a photographer. And so he didn't just work for me, he worked for other people. There was a restaurant in Boston, kind of like International House of Pancakes. It's called Bickford's, a chain. So they do breakfast and things like that. And he had done photography for them. And in lieu of cash, they gave him breakfast for the rest of his life. So that's a fair deal. And he befriended a waitress there, or so he thought. Well, one day the waitress told him that her boyfriend broke up with her. And so Stephen said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe you'd like to have dinner with me. And she didn't, and that's fine. But the next day, her tires were slashed. Now, it could have been Steve, or it could have been her ex-boyfriend. I don't know. But she had friends on the police force in Somerville, and she gave the police his plates, and they arrested him and held him for the maximum allowable number of days, 30 days, without charge. And on the 30th day, he went before the judge, and the judge is like, why are you holding this man? And, well, we suspect him of committing this crime. Like, well, do you have any evidence? Well, no. Okay. So the judge would release him. And then the next week, he would drive through the city of Malden, where she also had friends in the police force. And the Malden police rolled him up. So another 30 days. Now, he lived with his mother, and, so obviously he couldn't provide care to his mother. It was very stressful for him. And then he got released, same deal, 30 days, and the judge threw it out. And then he got rolled up by the Medford police, and another 30 days. So he spent 3 months in jail. Whether he committed this crime, I don't know, but it wasn't due process, that's for sure. So finally he gets released, and I reach out to him, sort of wondering why he wasn't answering my phone calls earlier, but he got back to me finally and told me all this story. And I had another job for him, so I got to hear the whole story. And he said, that's all right, she'll get hers. Okay, cool. Well, a month or so later, I'm listening to the news in my studio, and it comes on, breaking news, woman killed by mail bomb. This was like 97, 98. Mail bomb was pretty unusual. And I'm like, well, that gets your attention. And then they described the victim, and they gave her name. I don't recall what it was, but they said waitress at Bickford's. I'm like, oh no. So I called up some friends at Gateway Crafts. I'm like, did you hear the news? And like, yeah. Do you think? Yeah. So, We all suspected it. And about a day later, maybe 2 days later, the police roll him up for real this time. And he has not been released from prison since. And it turns out what happened was he also had lived in California. And so he took a trip to California where this waitress's sister lived, and he built a bomb and put it in a box and mailed it from the post office where this woman's sister lived. So she thought she was receiving a package from her sister, and she opened it up and left the planet very rapidly. So that's a pretty shocking story. Follow up, a couple of years later, I'm at a party and I was meeting, there were some first responders, firemen who were called to that scene, and nobody had seen anything like that. This is before the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there wasn't a lot of concept of that kind of carnage. And so these police officers and firemen who arrived at the scene where this woman was blown up, they were pretty traumatized. So there's really no lesson to draw from this that I can share with you. I will say Stephen was a little odd, but I treated him kindly. He didn't ask a lot from me, a small amount of money, and I made sure that I provided lunch for him every day. But I'm really glad he didn't blow me up, and I'm sorry the whole incident occurred. It's a bunch of sadness. All right, there's your dad's story.